just been bombed by a Zeppelin. It came over about half hour ago. I can't believe that after what we've just been through, how I didn't meet my end just now. Our battalion are part of the 22nd Division, 67th Brigade. We are known as the Welsh Brigade, as it also includes the 11th Service Battalion, Royal Welsh Fusiliers, the 8th Service Battalion, South Wales Borderers, and the 11th Service Battalion, Welsh Regiment. I suppose sitting here it would be very easy to find descriptions of the Western Front, Mesopotamia and Gallipoli. But here in Salonika, the events which have taken place are not so easy to find, and it is clear to me we're all being regarded as a sideshow. No one knows anything about us. I feel like we're the forgotten army, but lads here are dying in their thousands just the same. Here in this campaign, I know from speaking to one of the medics, for every casualty of battle, 3 die of malaria, influenza and other diseases. Back in 1915, we landed in Salonika in a combined Franco-British force of some 2 large brigades. We had landed on the request of the Greek Prime Minister. Our objective is to help the Serbs in their fight against the Bulgarian aggression. However, we landed too late for this, and the Serbs were beaten just before we set foot on land. Somebody then decided that we would be kept here for possible future operations, even against Greek opposition. The Greek King Constantine is pro-German, and some of his general staff have threatened, "You will be driven into the sea, and you will have no time even to cry for mercy." The outcome of the Gallipoli campaign has caused upset in the balance, and shipping in the area was involved, so we had no choice to stay. During the first 4 months of 1916, we did enough spade work to last me a lifetime. We helped place barbed wire around. Barbed wire has been used as a bastion for about 8 miles north of the city and connecting to the Vardar marshes to the west and the lake defences of Laganza and Bishek to the east, and so to the Gulf of Orfano and the Aegean Sea. This we have all named as the birdcage, on account of the quantity of wire we've all used. Just in front of me, the Bulgarians had also fortified the heights of the hills surrounding Salonika during the same time, which I can tell you has had dire consequences for us recently. The original 2 brigades were reinforced by our division, the 22nd, and the 26th, 27th and 28th divisions. If the Bulgarians were to descend from their Dorian and Sturma heights, it would be very difficult to push us into the sea now. In the summer of 1916, we'd been reinforced by an international force. There are Serbian, Russian and Italian units. A Bulgarian attempt of an invasion of Greece in that July was repulsed near Lake Dorian. 1917 I found was very quiet, with comparatively little activity on our part of the front in Macedonia. The second lieutenant said it was due to the complex political changes that had been taking place in Greece throughout the year. However, the main fighting was still taking place around Lake Dorian. At the beginning of 1918, we were told that we were preparing for a major offensive. This was intended to hopefully end the war once and for all in the Balkans. The Greek army has now been reorganised, and the great news is that they're now joining us as allies. Although our battalion was not involved in the offensive, which began in July 1918, it was only until a few days ago that we took part in the offensive. We had a briefing by the CO. He said we need to attack a series of fortified hills. Some of the other brigades are already engaged at Lake Dorian since the 15th. Our job is to carry out a frontal assault near Pit Ridge. This is 2,000 foot high, heavily defended mountain ridge, with fortresses built on the mountain. He continued, we are to assault Grand Couronne. I knew this hill is where the Bulgarians had been working on in the first months of 1916 and early 17. I knew we were going into a hill of death, and we were going to sustain very heavy casualties. I know the Battle of Dorian will be a forgotten episode of the Great War. We are going to be overshadowed by the doings of Hague in France and Allenby in Palestine. Yet I feel by the end of the assaults by us and the other brigades, we are going to be singularity of horror and in tragedy of defeated heroism. It would be unique amongst the records of British arms. I knew from the looks of our officers that the real work of the assault is going to be entrusted to our 22nd Division and the 26th. The Dorian Hills are to be attacked by us with cooperation from the Cretan Division of the Greek Army and a regiment of unreliable Zouaves with French colonial troops. Then in the early hours, following a tremendous bombardment by our guns, the whistle blew. We climbed up the ladder from the safety of our trench and into no man's land. I fixed my bayonet to my SMLE and placed a round in the chamber. Early light was an almost unclouded morning. We kept perfect order of battle and spacings were textbook. I loosened the chin strap on my helmet. The noise of our guns was then abruptly ceased before daybreak. Then came that awful pause in which defenders and attackers alike are braced up to face the ordeal with fear or desperation, with cool courage or with blazing ardour. As I moved forward, slowly, the pale grey smoke lifted away in layers of a thin film above the ridges. Blue shadows deepened every fold or hollow, and a dim golden glow was on the scrub, rock and heather. One of the lads shouted, "Them guns have done nothing." I looked. No one could tell what the effect was of our fire upon those fortified hills. We, the Welsh infantry soldier, rely upon the guns behind us. We trust in their power to smash a way through our advance by killing, demoralising the enemy and cutting up his defences. The nearer to the objective we were getting, any hopes or illusions were quickly undeceived. As we reached our first objective, I noted that we had not lost many lads. Some had dropped to the ground, these had to be left behind, and we were told not to stop. Then, suddenly, the assault was met with a crash of machine gun fire, and a cloud of dusty smoke began to blur the outline of the hills. I was now hearing screams from the lads being hit and cries of "Mother!" echoing all around me. I was shaking to the bone, but I still had to move on. Immediately, I could see, as I fell to the ground, we'd been overwhelmed in a deadly stream of bullets, which are whipping and whistling down the open slopes. Grand Couronne was clear in the distance. Through this murderous fire, we continued to move forward. By now, we were running up the slope. From what I could see, no mean feat of arms were going to surpass the glorious bravery of us Welshmen. I don't know how, but we reached a ridge. I think it's called Jameau's Ravine, or something like that. There I saw lingering gas. It's probably ours. I stopped, knelt down in a hail of bullets, and I put on my respirator. I was now shaking. My hands were shaking so much, I had difficulty getting the respirator on. Imagine, if you can, what it means to fight up a hillside, under heavy fire, wearing a hot mask all over your face, dimly staring through a pair of clouded goggles, and sucking the end of a rubber nozzle in your mouth. At the same time, heat is pouring down from the brazen sky. In this plight, you are called on to endure the blast of machine gun fire, the pointed steel or bursting shell of the enemy. Nor are you called on to endure alone. You must vigorously fire back and vigorously assail with your bayonet. It is as much like hell as anything you can think of. Ahead of us, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers got as far as the hilt, only half a mile below the central fortress, before being driven back by a fierce Bulgarian charge. Every officer was killed or wounded. Following these came the lads from the 11th Welsh, who were also compelled to retire fighting. We, the 3rd Battalion, on the slope, were also offered up to perish in this awful day. However, some of the lads, including me, did run over a few of the enemy trenches, which are full of dead or dying men. Through constant fire, our battalion nobly stormed up through the haze of battle until we reached near some hills, which I believe are called Tassel and the Knot. Then, to my horror, all at once the haze lifted and we were left exposed in the open to a sweeping and overwhelming fire. Lads were falling all around me. Whizzing sounds were flying past my ear. My helmet blew off by a bullet. I fell to the ground in an effort to place it back on. Another bullet passed through my water bottle and the water was pouring out. Suddenly, in the noise, I heard an officer bellow, "Charge!" I began screaming as I ran, but my company was melting away as we were charging, most falling dead amongst the rocks. Somehow, I heard a call to withdraw. First I crawled, then got up and ran back towards our lines. As we returned in dribs and drabs, a roll call was made. Of our whole battalion, only 1 officer and 18 men are alive. All last night, while trying to come to terms with what had just happened, I heard wounded men crying on the hillside or down the long ravine. Some screaming for stretcher bearers. These sounds got less as the more time moved on. We had been flung against positions no infantry in the world could ever have taken by a frontal attack. An officer from another regiment who had seen our assault said, "You've all proved yourselves to be good soldiers." Didn't he realise that our 2 entire brigades have been annihilated? Order been given, we've been moved back for some rest. Come on lads, let's go.